Hello everybody, today I'm doing my first ever tier list on this channel, and I thought there'd be no better tier list to do than a tier list of all 33 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, much because this is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time, as well as the highest grossing movie franchise of all time. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and please subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. Today we have 5 different tiers for you, those tiers being awesome, great, good, okay, and bad. All 33 of these movies are in order that they're released, so now let's get into it. The movie that kickstarted it all was 2008's Iron Man. This movie is definitely a phenomenal movie, which I honestly go back to rewatch a lot. This movie definitely sets the format and the formula to how these movies are going to be made, because it has its comedic side, it has its action, it has its over-the-top characters, and this movie is definitely a perfect example of all those traits. There's a lot of great side characters in this movie, like Pepper, War Machine, as well as Happy, and obviously the star of the movie, Robert Downey Jr. He is one of the best castings of all time as Iron Man. I really like this movie's origin story because in the beginning of the film, Iron Man is this guy who just sells weapons, who really only cares about himself. And by the end of the movie, he starts caring about people. He's still kind of a prick, but he actually has emotions and he becomes more of this human character. Also, another great element in this film is the fact that there's not that high of stakes. It's not like the Earth is ending or aliens are coming down from space. That's a pretty straightforward story. I do really enjoy this movie. That is why I'm putting Iron Man in the great tier. Second movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is the black sheep of the MCU for pretty much 2 reasons. Universal made this movie, so it definitely had a whole different tone and vibe to it, besides all other 32 movies that kind of have their own set goals and aesthetic. And this movie also obviously had Ed Norton playing the Hulk. And then the second appearance as the Hulk in the MCU was Mark Ruffalo. Don't get me wrong, I think both play the character very well. They're just so different. They're just so tonally separated from each other. There's really no callbacks to this movie. It does have some fun action sequences, and I do have some fun with it every time I watch it. I've only seen it twice. It's the MCU movie that I've seen the least. I never really want to go back to watch it. I don't hate the movie. I definitely don't like it, so I'm putting it in the okay tier. Next up, we have Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is a super frustrating MCU movie because there's so many great ideas in here, but they're all just jam-packed in this movie, and none of them can be fleshed out enough. Those ideas are essentially Nick Fury trying to start the Avengers, Black Widow, you have War Machine, you have Iron Man, you have multiple villains. Jon Favreau, who actually plays Happy, is the director of this film, and he said we need at least 3 years to make this movie and get the script right. They gave him 2, so that's why this movie probably feels as rushed as it does. It's definitely a disappointing sequel. I do have fun with it. There's not enough action, but I do enjoy the action that we have, and I do enjoy the characters that we also have. So I'm not putting this movie in the bad tier, but I'm definitely putting it in the okay tier. Halfway through phase 1, so now we're talking about Thor. This is once again a super frustrating MCU movie. There's definitely some early growing pains for phase 1 of Marvel. In Thor, the casting of Chris Hemsworth as Thor is a perfect casting, as well as for Loki, Tom Hiddleston is perfect in that role. I love both of them. I love a lot of the side characters. I honestly enjoyed the story in this movie, where in the beginning of the movie, Thor is the unrightful king who is just war-hungry and is very narcissistic. And then by the end of the movie, he kind of finds himself because Odin sends him back to Earth. He meets Natalie Portman, Jane Foster. So he kind of actually becomes this better character by the end. All that stuff works for me. I just think the ending doesn't land the mark at all. There's not an over-the-top action sequence that I enjoy. There's not a good character moment. So we have a film that's definitely not or okay. That being Captain America: The First Avenger. This movie is so stylistically different from every other MCU movie in a good way because it takes place during the World War II. You have Chris Evans, who once again is a phenomenal casting as Captain America. And I like this movie because it is so fresh and original, and I love World War II movies. The origin story that Captain America goes through on this movie, where Steve Rogers in the beginning of the film is this skinny guy who wants to go to war, but no one believes in him. He keeps getting rejected. And then a scientist guy finds him, sees the traits he has, and wants to make him Captain America. I love that kind of stuff. The villain Red Skull, I think, is a little weird. I don't hate him as much as everyone else does. The ending, once again, is kind of flat, but nowhere as bad as the Thor's ending. I like the movie, so I'm simply putting Captain America the First Avenger in the good tier. Rounding out Phase 1 is The Avengers. I love this movie. This is the first ever superhero movie that brought a bunch of superheroes together and put them into one movie and really, really made it work. I love how in the beginning of this movie, we have all 6 of these characters kind of on their own phase and path of life, and then they come together for the common goal of saving New York and fighting Loki. Loki, I think, is a great villain. I think Loki becomes better later on in these movies, but he's still pretty good in the Avengers. The Battle of New York is phenomenal. The chemistry and the on-screen banter between our 6 leads. You have Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury, who is awesome in every single movie he is in, and he's especially good as Nick Fury. Fun fact, I actually think the character of Nick Fury in the comic books was actually made around Samuel Jackson. They actually based the character of Nick Fury around Samuel Jackson, which is a really weird concept to think about it. So he obviously had to play Nick Fury if they were going to do that. I have no complaints about this movie. This is one of the MCU movies that I've seen the most. I really, really do love this movie. That is why I'm putting it in the awesome tier. Oh, we are on to Phase 2. Starting off with a little bit of a weird one. That being Iron Man 3. The reason I say it's weird, not because of Iron Man, not because we're in Phase 2. The fact that they thought this was the end of Iron Man's story, so they kind of made it a closing point for the character of Tony Stark, but then he obviously returned for multiple more movies, and his next appearance was Avengers Age of Ultron a couple years after this movie. So that itself was a little bit weird. Some of the elements that I think really, really work in this movie is I like how Tony Stark is having PTSD from the Avengers. He's just having a lot of issues and has the kid character, who I think is very funny, and the on-screen banter between Tony and him really work, and he kind of helps Tony through this PTSD that he's going through. The Mandarin twist, yes, is dumb, but I think I've always known that that was the twist, so when I saw this movie for the first time, it didn't really bother me as much as it probably does for you. I don't really like the villains either way. I think Pepper Potts is awesome in this movie. I think War Machine is awesome in this movie. It has a lot of fun. I enjoy most of the story. I just think if they knew what these movies were going to become later on, I think this movie would have picked a better story and it would have been more accessible to the broad audience of the MCU. But I'm still putting Iron Man 3 in the good tier, but it'll probably be on the lower side of that once I finish this list. Our second Phase 2 movie is Thor: The Dark World. Yeah, this movie blows. If there was a tier below bad on this, it would definitely be in there. Yeah, the first question is for you. Who is the villain of this movie? I don't know. I watched this movie 48 hours ago, and I still can't tell you his name. The villain is so flat, so boring, has no traits at all that you'll remember. The story is dull. The characters are just weird in this movie. The character of Darcy, the character of Eric Selvig, I can't stand either of them in the movie. Which, in past movies, I actually enjoyed these characters. It's weird. I don't think this movie really fleshes out the character of Thor very well. I think the only good element of this movie is pretty much Loki. That's the only thing I think they did right. The story's bad, this movie sucks, and I don't enjoy it. So it's going in the bad tier. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is totally a roller coaster ride of a movie for me. Because the first time I saw it, I liked it. The 5th time I saw it, I said it was the most overrated MCU movie by far. Then I rewatched it. Now I love this movie, much because I love action movies, and this is a phenomenal action movie, as well as because I love all the characters. You got Captain America, Bucky, Falcon, Black Widow, Nick Fury. There's so many great moments for each of these characters. I like how this movie is very thought out. It's very well written. I like seeing the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. and seeing that they were actually Hydra. I think all that stuff was perfectly portrayed in this movie. It is definitely a awesome MCU movie. So forth, I'm putting it in the awesome tier. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. This is one of the most fun, funny, different, unique, original movie that has a phenomenal soundtrack, which has these D-list characters at the time of making this movie and put them into the A tier. All the characters on this movie are great. The performances are phenomenal. The writing, the script is perfect. The on-screen banter between the 5 characters, the family that they build, the direction from James Gunn is phenomenal. Clearly, I like this movie. It is awesome, and I don't know anyone who doesn't enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. They are really something special, and this one is my personal favorite Guardians film, and I have no complaints about it. Other than maybe the villain. I don't love Rodin that much, but I don't hate him. So this movie is going in the awesome tier. Avengers Age of Ultron. This movie essentially just doubled down on everything that the Avengers did right, which I think is the main issue with this movie because it just feels like a cut up copy of the better film that is the Avengers. You have new Avengers in this movie. You have Scarlet Witch, you have Quicksilver, you have Ultron, who I think is a super underrated villain. I really do like him. The action's good. And it's just a weaker version of the Avengers, in my opinion, is the best way to put it. There's some great character moments. It can be slow at times. It cannot be as rewatchable. I think it's overhated, and some people overrate it. It's either you love it or you hate it, and I don't love it or hate it. So I'm putting it in the good tier. Rounding out Phase 2, we have Ant-Man. I think Ant-Man perfectly executed on everything that I was trying to execute. If I had to pick a MCU movie that I've seen the most, it is also Ant-Man. So this is definitely a hard movie to rank because it really wasn't trying to swing for the fences. It was just trying to swing for like a double. So it got a double. And I really did enjoy this movie. I like that it's a crime heist movie. It's kind of a smaller scale. Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is hilarious. The character of Luis is one of my favorite MCU characters. And the fact that he wasn't Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is just sacrilegious in my opinion. Ant-Man's awesome. I love the villains. I like the story. And for what it was trying to do, I think it perfectly executed it. So I'm simply putting this movie in the good tier. It is also a movie that I definitely, am I just scrolling on Disney Plus? I'm probably going to watch Ant-Man. That's how much I watched this movie. Kickstarting Phase 3, you have Captain America Civil War. This is actually one of the first MCU movies that I've seen. And this movie is just a pleasure to any Marvel comic book fan. You're just watching your personal favorite heroes going up against each other in an epic battle at the airport. And the fact that they put their 2 lead characters, Iron Man and Captain America, put them up against one another and actually made compelling reasons to why this one's right and why that one's right. Half the fan base is on one side, the other half's on the other side. I'm personally definitely Team Cap, even though I like the character of Iron Man more. This is a phenomenal movie. It's a great action movie. And it's definitely just perfect. The introductions of some of the characters in this movie, like Black Panther and Spider-Man, are legendary. There's so many great character moments. And I really don't have much to say that I don't like about this movie. Other than that, I find the pacing to be a little bit off. And I just really not a big fan of Bucky. And there's a lot of Bucky in this movie. That's why I'm not putting this movie in the awesome tier. But I'm putting it in the great tier for sure. We have Doctor Strange. This movie does some stuff definitely right. I like the character of Doctor Strange. He pretty much is a cutout copy origin story of Iron Man, just in a different setting, where in the beginning of the movie, he's this bad guy that really doesn't care about anything else but himself. He's rich. He messes up. He gets hurt. He finds the sanctum. He gets the time stone. He becomes this hero. Pretty similar to Iron Man, just saying. The villain here I don't like. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The visual effects are awesome. This is by far the most trippy movie in the cinematic universe. The visual effects are kind of something like Inception and Harry Potter thrown together is what Doctor Strange is pretty much made of. I really do enjoy this. It's a pretty easy watch. I do rewatch it quite a lot. I think the villains blow. I don't like them at all. The third act is weak. And it's a little bit too long. But overall, I do like the movie, so I'm confidently putting this in the good tier, probably on the higher end of that. Next, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie suffers from the Avengers Age of Ultron serum, meaning that it pretty much just doubled down on everything that Guardians of the Galaxy 1 did and just threw it into Guardians of the Galaxy 2, kind of like Age of Ultron did with the Avengers. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good movie because you liked the first movie. It just was just disappointing. You were expecting more. You're expecting more new things. And this movie really didn't do that for me. It was as funny as the first one. It had as great of moments. It had as great as a soundtrack. Story-wise, it was weak in my opinion. I did not like the villain of Ego. I thought that whole thing was weird. It took up too much of the movie. The plot ending twist thing was obvious that he was going to be bad. The fact that he had a bunch of different kids from a bunch of different species from a bunch of different planets. I don't know. I like Kurt Russell. I just don't like Ego. It's a fun movie, so I'm putting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in the good tier. Next, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. In my opinion, this is one of the most impressive MCU movies because there was 2 prior Spider-Man movies which were Spider-Man origin stories. So this movie was a Spider-Man origin story, which is very different and really felt totally different from the other 2 origin stories, which I thought was very good because I didn't want to cut out a copy of one of those origin stories. Tom Holland's great as the role. I love the character of Ned. I love the character of MJ. Vulture is one of my personal favorite MCU villains. The twist at the end where Vulture is actually the dad of the girl that Spider-Man is taking to Homecoming. I like it. I really don't got too many issues with it. The best part is that Iron Man is kind of mentoring Peter. I think that is awesome to see, which really makes this movie different from the other Spider-Man movies because there's no other Avengers in the other Spider-Man movies. I like it. I think it was not a movie that could shoot for the sky because they were just trying to set the ground for the character. They didn't do anything too special, but they definitely didn't do anything too bland. So it definitely worked for me. That's why I'm putting Spider-Man Homecoming in the great tier. Next, we have Thor Ragnarok. If I was a massive fan of Thor, which I really am not, I'm not a hater of Thor, I just don't like him as much as everyone else does, I probably would have this movie in the awesome tier. It is one of the most funny MCU movies, which feels the most different. In my opinion, it is the only good Thor movie, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. I like how Thor is definitely different in this movie. He just has a whole different tone and vibe to him. Definitely, as well as the appearance is definitely different. This whole movie is just different. It's very comedic. It's very funny. It's very out there. And I think it all landed the mark for what it was trying to do. The fight between Thor and Hulk, I really also do enjoy. Hela as a villain, I think she's good. I don't like her as much as everyone else does. This movie feels very scattered at times where I just have struggles to keep up with some of the beginning stuff. I just feel like it could be a little slow. I know some people are going to be annoyed by that because a lot of people love this movie. I don't hate this movie. Not putting it in the awesome tier, but I'm confidently putting it in the great tier. Now we have Black Panther. The thing that annoys me the most about Black Panther are the people that try to push down Black Panther and try to find too many issues with this movie and say that the CGI final battle stuff is bad and hurts this movie and doesn't make it a phenomenal movie. Other than that, I do agree what people are saying. I do see where they are coming from. The movie can be a little bit slow, takes a little bit to get going, but besides that, this movie works for me. I love Chadwick Boseman. I love Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. It is so sad that he died and we didn't ever get to see him in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which is still, I don't even want to talk about that. Killmonger is phenomenal. Michael B. Jordan really lands the role there. I like how Killmonger, you actually see that he is definitely broken. He's a hero, he's a villain that you actually feel for because you understand where he's coming from. He actually has viable reasons why he's doing the things he's doing, even though he's the bad guy. So he's not really a pure evil bad guy. He's just a broken guy who had some past that wasn't too good. So he got leading into Killmonger. It's a very funny movie. I love the score. I love the world of Wakanda. And I really do love this movie. That is why I'm putting Black Panther in the awesome tier. Avengers Infinity War. This is quite obviously going right in the awesome tier. The fact that the heroes actually didn't win at the end of this movie was very bold and really worked in my opinion. Having all these characters and all these movies coming together for one massive epic Avengers movie that is on a scale that we have never seen before in any movie ever made. This movie's phenomenal. It is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. It's my second favorite superhero movie of all time. I love most of the characters. I think Thanos is a great villain. And I have zero complaints about this movie. Right in the awesome tier we go. Next we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. This movie might be the smallest scale movie that is taking place right after the biggest scale movie, which I think is brilliant. I love all the Ant-Man characters. Like I said earlier before, I have a soft spot for Ant-Man. This movie is not as good as the first Ant-Man movie because the villain of Ghost, I think, is extremely weak. I don't like her at all. This movie might not be as funny as the first one. You still have Luis in there, who's hilarious, but I think Paul Rudd is not as funny because you have the Wasp in there, which kind of makes it more grounded and more humanitized. I like how you spend time in the quantum realm. That stuff does fascinate me. This movie, I think, could have been better. Some people overhate it. Some people overrate it. I'm putting it right in the good tier. We have Captain Marvel. There had to be a movie that had to be in the bad tier in Phase 3. I guess nothing's perfect. And Captain Marvel is far from that. The only thing that works in this movie is Nick Fury. Seeing a younger version of him, I think, is really cool. Brie Larson's performance as Captain Marvel, I don't like. I don't know if that's the issue or the character of Captain Marvel's the issue. I'm blaming both of them because I don't like the character. I don't like the performance. She's too flat as a person. Like, she has no redeeming qualities that I enjoy. Kind of like the Thor the Dark World villain. But you put the most flat character with the most overpowered powers. Yeah, bad combination. That's why this movie is easily going in the bad tier for me. Next, we have another movie that is straight up awesome. Avengers Endgame. I don't love it as much as Avengers Infinity War, but it's definitely in the same tier. That's why I'm putting it in the awesome tier. This is a phenomenal close to the Infinity Saga, having all of these characters come back. The third act might be the best third act in any movie ever. It is that good. This movie gives me chills every single time I watch it. I feel so much emotion. Yes, it can be a little bit long. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow. That's why it's not as high as Avengers Infinity War, but I love this movie. The death from Iron Man is just so fulfilling. It's just so perfect for the character of Iron Man. Captain America's ending was awesome. Black Widow's sacrificing herself, I think, is also perfect. This is an awesome movie, and if anyone says different, they are just straight up wrong. Next, we have the final movie in Phase 3, which I think should be a Phase 4 movie, but it's not. That's Spider-Man Far From Home. I do enjoy this movie. I do have fun with it. But on a story level, this movie is completely all over the place and doesn't make a lot of sense. So you're telling me Tony Stark, the most powerful guy that has one of the most powerful weapons, his glasses, which are pretty much can do anything, he put them as a will to a Peter Parker who is like in high school and as well who was dead for 5 years. So why would you put that in his will if he's dead and then give him no instruction on how to use it? Yeah. Doesn't make sense to me. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, I like it. I like all the other characters. I like the energy. I like the action. I like the Spider-isms. But as a Spider-Man movie, it's definitely on the weaker side. I like that they're trying to go for something different. It just didn't work for me that much. I don't hate it, and I did have fun with it. So that means it's obviously going in the good tier. Phase 4. The beginning of the downward slope of the MCU. I like the character of Black Widow. It was cool to see that she got her own movie. But this movie should have definitely came out around Civil War and should have came out especially when the character of Black Widow was still alive. The villain blows. The ending blows. The final CGI battle blows. The whole thing when they're coming down from the sky looks horrible, is horrible, doesn't make any sense. Taskmaster as a villain is just weird, stupid. I like the introduction of Florence Pugh in this movie. I like the introduction of Hopper, him playing Red Guardian, I believe. Those are some good characters. I like Black Widow's family besides her mom. It's a good introduction to some new characters. Have some decent, fun moments in there. But overall, this movie does blow. It definitely blows. I've said blowed a lot with Black Widow. So I'm putting it in the bad tier, but I'm going to be putting it on the top of the bad tier. Next, that brings us to Shang-Chi. One of the only new additions to the MCU past Phase 4 that I actually enjoy. Just as a movie per se, as well as a new character. I like the character of Shang-Chi. I like how this is very martial arts film. I like how it's different, unique, has a great villain, has a great style, has a great tone and vibe to it. I think for what they tried to do, they landed the mark. I don't love this movie that much. I think there's not enough action. There's not enough great character moments. The story's good. It's just not as good as I was hoping it to be. It's a good Phase 4 movie. It's going to be high on my Phase 4 ranking, but it's going to be just right smacked in the middle in my MCU tier list, so that's why I'm putting it probably in the good tier, probably about halfway through the good tier. Next we have Eternals. Straight up, this is the worst MCU movie. I don't care about any of the characters, I don't care about the story, I don't care about the Celestials, I don't care about Harry Styles, I don't care about anything about this movie, and I don't even want to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it. Straight to the bottom of bad, and don't question me on it. If you enjoyed this movie, you're either on crack, or I'm happy for you because you actually enjoyed a movie that I hate, and that means you liked one more MCU movie than I did. So congratulations if that is the case. We have Spider-Man No Way Home, a movie that I love a lot. I love all the Spider-Man, I love all the villains, so why don't we just throw them in one massive multiverse movie that I love with Doctor Strange, MJ, Ned, and all these great characters, and it really did work for me. This is one of my favorite movie theater experiences by far. I saw this multiple times. I loved how lit the theater was. Tons of fun. A great experience that I might never be able to feel again. There's only 2 movies on this list that actually made me feel like, holy shit, it's happening. Avengers Endgame and No Way Home. Even though Infinity War is my favorite, I just wasn't really sure where that movie was going. Well, it began and then it became the best movie. So that's a little bit different. But my 2 theater experiences for Endgame and No Way Home are awesome. I love No Way Home. I know how many people try to nitpick the story. Yes, the story's a little weird. It's just, when everyone says it's lazy, right? And I just think Doctor Strange was lazy and felt bad for Peter Parker, so he wanted to use the spell and get him into college. Whatever. I love this movie. Easily in the awesome tier, and I assume you love this movie too. If not, you have some issues. Next up, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Honestly, I think the main issue with this movie is that the hype around it was so high. Coming off Spider-Man No Way Home, one of the most hyped up movies of all time, one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And you got a flat, mediocre Doctor Strange movie from Sam Raimi. All the Sam Raimi stuff I enjoyed. All the MCU Overseer stuff I didn't like. I like Scarlet Witch. I hate American Chavez. The multiverse appearances of Professor X and Mr. Fantastic were underutilized. Movie's too long, has a lot of pacing issues. I do like the characters, I do like the style, so I'm going to be putting this movie right in the good tier. Second to last in Phase 4, Thor Love and Thunder. Or as I like to call it, Thor Love and What the Fuck, because what the fuck was this movie, man? You're coming off Thor Ragnarok, one of the best MCU movies, and you have the same director, same cast, and it's a completely different tone and vibe to it. It's so stupid, it's so corny, you have screaming ghosts, you have the Guardians of the Galaxy in there for a minute, you have Gore, who's a actual evil character who's not, like, comedic, and throw him in the most ridiculous comedic MCU movie. What are we doing here? I saw this movie 3 times in theaters. Don't ask me why. I hate it. And it's not as bad as Eternals, but it is as bad as Eternals. I just can't put it lower than Eternals because Eternals is just horrible. I hate this movie. Right into the bad tier it goes. Let's move on to the next movie. Next, we have Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This movie is completely the opposite from Thor Love and Thunder. Pretty much for the fact that this movie is actually serious. It's not jokes. It is literally a funeral. It's the most emotional MCU movie because you had Chadwick Boseman passing. This movie was dealt the worst hand because their lead died halfway through making this movie, so they had to redo and retcon the whole thing. It was during COVID. For all that stuff, I think this movie was pretty good. It's not one I like to go back to rewatch because it's sad and it's a little bit long. I liked all the characters. I think they definitely paid the respects to Chadwick Boseman, which if they didn't do that well, I bet it would have been really annoyed. I love the character of Namor. I want to see more with him. It's a fun movie. I saw it twice. I've never seen it at home yet. Definitely got to give it a rewatch. I like it a lot. I like it. It is a good MCU movie, but nothing more. It would have been better with Chadwick Boseman, but obviously that is not a reality we're going to have. So, it gets the good tier. Moving on to Phase 5. We only have 3 movies in Phase 5 so far, and Phase 5 has been pretty dreadful. Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. First off, we don't have Luis in the movie. What are we doing? I love Luis. He's one of the best MCU characters. We've kept going on and on about it. Ken's an awesome villain. Jonathan Majors was a massive, great performer, and I love Jonathan Majors until he got fired because he did some dumb shit. As well as, why did you kill Kane off, who's going to be your new big bad, by some ants? So, the smallest possible creature, an ant, became big to kill your big bad? Yeah, okay. That alone just sounds stupid enough to me. What is going on? I like the quantum realm. I just don't like that they spent the entire movie essentially in the quantum realm. MODOK, don't get me started. Don't get me started with Ant-Man's daughter. It was bad casting swap. Bad movie. Other than Paul Rudd, this movie blows, and that is why it's going straight, once again, into the bad tier. The only Phase 5 movie that I enjoy, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This one is going in the great tier. I think I needed to give it a rewatch to see if I even like it more. I definitely like it. I actually have a fun experience with this one as well because I went to a early screening, but it was a showing of all three Guardians of the Galaxy movies back to back, and that was from like 7 to 3 a.m., and I had a job interview at like 7 a.m. the next day. I ended up getting the job, so all went well, but the whole thing was just funny. I was so tired of that interview because I was watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Definitely an interesting 24 hours for me. The first time seeing it, because I was so tired, I didn't like it as much. I rewatched it twice in theaters, and I enjoyed it even more. It's definitely a sad movie. They put Rocket in the spotlight, and I think that is a great idea. The fact that everyone was predicting people dying and they didn't kill off anyone, I think was brilliant and definitely a twist that no one was really expecting. It's a great send-off to the characters and a great close to one of the best MCU trilogies. And I love James Gunn, and I love every single one of these characters. The last movie in Phase 5 and the last MCU movie that was made is The Marvels. This is a worse movie than Captain Marvel because Nick Fury is more annoying in this movie. And I do think Captain Marvel is a little bit more likable. I don't hate Miss Marvel. I don't hate Monica Rambeau. I'm happy that they threw those in the movie because if it wasn't for them, I would probably hate this. It's not great. Definitely in the bad tier. I don't like it. It doesn't piss me off as much as some of the other movies. So I'll probably put it above Thor, Love, and Thunder and Eternals. But definitely still don't like it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you got to the end of the video, I appreciate that. And if you've watched the whole thing, thank you very much. Please subscribe to help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And I would love to see your tier list in the comment section down below or any other questions or anything you want to comment down below. I'll be responding to every single comment. Thank you once again. Until next time, there'll be more videos in the near future. I'm actually going to be redoing this video in July when Deadpool 3 comes out. So hopefully that movie is in the awesome tier. Thank you once again. Please subscribe and have a wonderful day, night, morning, whatever you're having at this moment. Goodbye.